All right, so we now know that the government is going to spend money, and they're also going to tax us. That's a part of life, right? There's two guarantees in life, death and taxes, right? So in this case, we want to look a little bit about what happens with government spending and government taxing. Where does it come from? All right, so let's look at it from the government spending first of all. Now, there's kind of a cool graph. There's no way I can draw it, but I would like you to take a peek at it potentially. On page 347, that talks about where the money goes and what it's been doing in history. All right. So what they have on page 347 is this comparison of 1970 USA to 2010 USA. Where is the government money going? All right. So back in 1970, what was the number one thing that the government spent money on? Defense. Military. In 2010, where does our money go? Income security. Okay, what the hell is that? What is income security? Well, no, this is the government spending. The government is not spending on income tax. This is where it's, some of it's Social Security, some of it's Medicare and Medicaid, unemployment compensation, welfare, pensions for those government employees who get pensions, right? All that kind of stuff. So why did we shift from, military to income security from 1970 to 2010? Do we have less military now in 2010? So why did income security take over? Well, we have more people, but that's not necessarily the real reason why. We have more people in what age category? The baby boomers who are getting old. And what are those old people doing? They're retiring. And when they retire, what do they collect? Those bastards. Right? So one of the things that a lot of potential people have discussed as being a way to fix our government spending problem is one good old person disease. Yeah, exactly, right? So just take the specific area where most of those people are congregated who are getting those payments and accidentally have them, whoops, slip off the side of the world, right? The problem that we're having is not that we don't have enough money for these people. We do have enough money for these people, but it's based on 1960s and 1970s life expectancy. Back in 1970, we expected the average person to live to around 68, plus or minus. Nowadays, folks, it's not that bad. Life expectancy now is 73. In other words, on average, how many years more of Social Security are these people collecting? 5. But we've only been saving for these. That's where the shortage is coming from. It's the mathematicians who screwed up, not the politicians, right? The mathematicians should have known that the life expectancy was going to go up on average as people got older, and therefore they should have adjusted how much Social Security they collected, and then we would never have gotten into this problem to begin with. That would fix our problem, folks, right? I mean, no one would disagree that if all of a sudden half the people that were older than age 70, all of a sudden had an accident, we as a country would not be better off. I mean, just. But unfortunately, that's not what we want to do, because that would be bad and immoral, and we are all moral individuals, right?
No, you told us we were businessmen.
True. No, that was on the micro side. We're now on the macro side. Now we have to be lovey, touchy-feely, happy people. 1970, here was the income security. Is defense? Okay, so they just hopped over. And really it's because of the aging society. And if we would have planned better for the growth in, growth in life expectancy, that's maybe not the right way of putting it. It's maybe the growth in medical accessibility that's caused this.
So what's going to happen if 15 years from most of the baby boomers are gone? Do they switch back to the military?
Well, what will happen is that this, as a percentage of the amount of money the government spends, will drop, yeah. Again, as to whether or not the government necessarily keeps spending military at the same level, kind of depends on the... Oh, no, my generation doesn't have as many... I know, but those are the people who earn the money, right? I mean, when I retire, it's going to be golden years. Yeah, sorry, yes. You guys aren't that old, come on. You guys are all younger than I am, right? Say that you are, Amanda, come on. Anyways, the idea, though, is that, yes, right now, because of the swing of the baby boomers, we have a large percentage of our expenditures having to go to income security. Once that starts to swing, once the baby boomers actually start to keel over, this will swing back. It's morbid, but it's very, very true, right? I mean, if you're a true patriotic American, right, remember that you would only buy new, and when your parents got past the stage where they're being productive in the workforce, that's right. See you later. Don't blame me, blame my econ teacher. All right. Regardless, though, this is where our money goes, folks. Good or bad? I don't know. Now, you never know what it is. Some things you want them to vacuum up right away. Oh, that is really weird. It's probably like asbestos particles from the ceiling, which, you would want them to vacuum up, right? Oh. Yeah, that's... All right, so now that we understand they're vacuuming, let's move past that. So, what percentage of government spending is a part of our GDP, right? Normally, GDP coming from the government is 18 to 25%. When we are in recessions, G will get closer to 25%. When we are in boom times, G will get closer to 18%. Note actual government spending as a percentage of overall GDP is a higher percentage than the amount of government spending as a percentage of GDP. And again, remember the reason why is that this G up here is the G that's going towards GDP only. There are some times where the government spends money that doesn't actually go to GDP. Those are all the automatic stabilizers, folks. The transfer payments, unemployment, welfare, Social Security, those things don't affect GDP right away. So that's why 40% is what actual government spending as a percentage of GDP is. So the government spends, roughly $4 to $5 trillion, and our total GDP is somewhere around, 16 trillion or so. Again, that's the government spending a lot of money, but the government's very big, right? It's part of life. So, Where does, there's an O in that. So where does the government get the money that it spends? Yes, some of it it borrows, but realize that eventually it has to pay for those. The fact remains is that it gets it from taxes. Now, what kind of taxes are there? Kind of tax? Income tax. Income tax is about 40 to 45% of government collections, roughly. Number 2? Yeah. This is government. Government doesn't collect sales tax. That's only state and local. Social Security and FICA taxes. FICA taxes being insurance. This is another 40% or so. So 80% of the government's money comes from either income or Social Security taxes. He really was vacuuming. Number 3 on the list. Yeah, corporate taxes. 9 to 10%. Please note that we as people pay 4 times as much as corporations do. And again, note that there's a lot more people than there are companies, right? So that's why, right? The other stuff, excise taxes. Folks, these are the taxes that they collect from imports. And the other types of taxes that foreign companies or countries pay when they want to sell goods inside of our country. And this, it's anywhere from 3 to 5%. And then the rest comes from various different sources, right? Some of it comes from donations, some of it comes from earnings on investments, et cetera, et cetera. The government actually does make money other ways than from us. The government has a couple of businesses that it runs that actually make money. Actually, the Federal Reserve is for-profit industry where every penny that they earn actually gets paid into the U.S. Treasury, which, again, we'll get to that. That's more like Chapter 17. But, all right. So this stuff, this is good things for you to know. I am not going to test you on any of this crap. Please don't memorize any of the charts or any of the tables or where the money comes from. Okay? I just want you to have at least seen this, right? Because it's good to know, 1, where our money's going, and 2, where it comes from. All right? Now, so since we are collecting all this money in taxes, in order to collect tax, the government must pass the tax into law. How does the government convince you that a tax is okay? There are 2 basic principles or 2 standard methods that politicians will use to try and convince you that a tax is good for us. Well, of course, they have to lie. They're politicians. All right, the first type is that when they write the law explaining how the tax is collected and spent, they base it on a benefits received principle. All right, so a benefits received tax is a tax that comes from using what the tax is spent on. Sounds like I'm just using circular logic to explain this. Well, I'm a good politician. The best kind of circular thing is to make it sound normal but have it be circular. So the classic tax for this The classic example is the gas tax. This is the number one type of tax that has been enacted across the country. Almost everybody votes for it when it comes up, almost always, whether it's at the city level, the county level, the state level, or even the national level. There actually is a national gas tax. It's one of the few salesy type taxes that exist at the national level. Why? Why is the gas tax a benefits received tax? One, because what is gas tax used for? Well, fixing things, but what does it fix specifically? The highways. That's all it's used for. Every penny that the government collects, whether it's state, local, or federal, from gas tax must be spent on infrastructure that has to deal with people who are going to use gasoline. So it has to be spent on roads, it has to be spent on bus systems, it has to be spent on anything that is going to utilize gas, right? So the collection comes from items, and I'll put items in quotes because this could be a car, it could be a truck, it could be a farm, right? You know, I mean, everybody's buying gas for various different reasons. That will use it on the roads and infrastructure that the money is spent on. So the idea is that the government collects the tax from sales of gas, and when it gets that money, it will only spend it on those things where gas will be used on it. So the benefit that you're receiving from the tax is going directly to whatever you receive the tax from, hence the concept benefits received. Can you think of any other taxes that are like that? You guys are paying taxes all day, every day. You complain about it nonstop. So what other taxes do you pay that are going to go directly back to whatever it is that you paid the tax for? When was the last time you guys took a flight somewhere? Could be a while ago. But there is, on almost all plane tickets now, an airport tax. It's usually collected by the county because most of the airports that exist out there right now are being run by county, entities. And again, every penny that the county collects from the airport tax must get spent on upkeep of the airport, right? So you pay on plane tickets, reverse those two, spent on airport upkeep. And if they collect enough money, expansion, right? So if your airport collects enough taxes, then it could actually potentially grow, which supposedly that's going to happen to O'Hare in the next couple of years.
That place doesn't need to grow.
It needs another runway.
It needs to get some more people out of it.
Yes, O'Hare is a black hole that you may wind up in someday. I don't particularly like it. But again, it's one of those places where the tax is relatively high because, of course, it's also Illinois. All right, now, the other way that you get taxes nowadays is the ability to pay tax. In other words, if you're buying a specific item, or if the tax is being taxed upon you, you're making enough or you have enough that you should be able to pay for the tax anyways. All right? The rich tax, yeah. The classic example of this, right, is the luxury tax. If you are purchasing a large ticket item like a house, a yacht, a car, if the value of that item that you're purchasing is beyond a certain price level, you will have to start paying luxury tax on the amount of money past the quote-unquote luxury level, right? If you look at the prices of cars, usually most car prices stop somewhere around that $80,000 mark because that's where the luxury tax starts. So the high-end cars where they're trying to be high-end but not opulent, not asshole-like, it'll stop at $80,000 because you don't pay any luxury tax on those cars, right? So somewhere between 60 and 80, those are top-end luxury cars, but they're not the true luxury ones. Once you pay more than $80,000 for a car, you pay a 15% luxury tax on every dollar past $80,000. So if you're buying a Maserati for $120,000, that's $40,000 past $80,000. You'll pay an additional $6,000 in taxes on top of it to the government to be able to buy that. But if you're buying a Maserati for $120,000, what's $6,000 more, right? I mean, that's you bending over and picking it up off the floor of your swimming pool, because undoubtedly that's what you fill your swimming pool with. Money, right? They're probably, but if they're going through Craigslist, they're probably trying to bypass the government. Yeah, used good. Those are unpatriotic Americans. Well, and that's all the more reason why they want to sell it without the government intervention, right? Because they want to keep the extra, $6,000 to $7,000 at $135. I mean, come on. If you're selling a Craigslist. Yeah, I got the money. Can I test drive it? Oh, geez, all of a sudden. All right. Again, this is where a lot of our excise tax comes from as well. If you can afford to buy an imported good, you can afford to pay the excise tax on the imported good as well, right? Again, it's one of those, that's how they sell it to us. Because normally, how often is a citizen going to vote for a tax increase? Yeah, I mean, our standard response is to, clench our buttocks and say, no, right? I mean, well, isn't that what you do when somebody wants you to pay more taxes? Well, you can stop getting screwed one way or the other. All right. Now, once we get these taxes passed, whatever they are, whether they're benefits received or ability to pay, they then fall into one of three types of categories. So the three types of taxes that exist, and create your notes however you want. We're going to have to explain these and go through examples, so bear with me to some degree. There's a progressive tax. There's a flat or proportional tax. And then there is the regressive tax. So I will define these first, and then I will go through examples to show you what the hell I'm talking about. So a progressive tax is where the tax is a higher percent of income for richer individuals. In other words, the more money you make, the higher percent you pay of your income on the tax. Again, all of these types of taxes are based as a percentage of income. Please keep that in mind What it means is that you have to understand what the hell a percent means, which I know is sometimes unfair. Good. So then you're going to like this part. Okay? So a flat or proportional tax is where the tax is the same percent of income for everybody. Again, this does not mean that the amount of the tax is the same. All right? It means that the percent of income is the same. The amount of the tax will not be the same. And then last but not least, the regressive tax is where the tax is a higher percent of income for the poor. So when politicians or governments or entities are trying to pass a tax, they will often talk about these two categories, benefits received or ability to pay. Very rarely will they talk about whether or not the tax is progressive, regressive, or flat. And the reason why is that most of the taxes we have out there are regressive. They screw the poor more than they screw the rich. That's a hard sell if you actually talk about it, okay? So therefore, it's very rarely talked about. Now, the question is, how the hell does that happen? And why do we keep letting it happen? All right, so let's start with the progressive tax, first of all. So examples of number one. So any of these ability to pay taxes tend to be there, folks. Luxury taxes are the sorts of things where, how many of you have ever actually paid luxury tax? I mean, have any of you ever bought a house for more than $500,000? That's the level here in Wisconsin. Or a car for more than $80,000. Or a yacht for more than $75,000. I think a yacht's not the same as a car for some reason. So did he have to pay some luxury tax? You should ask him. Right? So if he bought a yacht that was worth more than $75,000, he probably had to pay luxury tax on it. Find the bill of sale, see if it's in there. I'd love to see it. Granted, 90s, I doubt it's still around, but you never know, all right? So the classic example is a luxury tax. And the reason why this is the best example is most poor people pay 0%. Because, of course, they can't afford to buy anything that gets into the luxury tax range. Yeah, those poor people living on yachts, they're homeless, right? Because they don't have a home, they just have a yacht. It's 90 feet long, and it's got more amenities than my house, but whatever, it's not a house. Wow. All right, so the other classic example of a number one is our income tax system. Our income tax system is called a graduated income tax or a progressive income tax. And the reason why, of course, is that the more money you make, the higher the percent is, right? In fact, the book even spends a fair amount of time talking about it. If you flip to page 353, it talks about how taxes are charged on people's income as it grows. Right? So you can actually see that our income tax scheme is actually a progressive scheme. Wonderful sort of thing, right? The kind of sort of thing that you would actually want, right? So the richer you get, the more you pay. I mean, it seems reasonable, right? So what did Herman Cain run on his Republican platform back in the 2014 GOP nomination effort? Yeah, get rid of this graduated progressive tax system, which is way too complicated, right? It's complicated. People never know how much they owe in tax because the percent keeps changing and people have to use percent. Oh my God, percents. How could they survive? And so we, as pizza magnates, right? I mean, because that's what Herman Cain made his money, was selling pizzas. He's like, look, in order to make it easier for Americans, we're going to say, screw this, 10% to 35% tax rate. Oh my God, that's so confusing. Let's just set it at 9. Right, well, he said 999, right? 9 for the percent tax that we pay on income, 9 for the percent sales tax, and I forget what the last 9 was. I think that was Social Security and yeah, it was 3 9s for some reason. I was like, really, 999? Flip over, Herman. That's what you are. All right, so the idea, of course, was he was saying that it would be easier if things were a flat tax. But if it's a flat tax, who's it helping compared, if it's... Oh, yeah. Herman Cain was trying to pay less taxes, period. I mean, he's not an idiot. Well, I mean, but they would only have to pay 9% too. Right now they're paying 10%. Wow. Of course, whatever. It's true. All right, so income tax is one of the best progressive taxes that are out there. Our income tax system used to be more progressive back in the prior to the Reagan era. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But a flat tax, can you guys name anything that is a flat proportional tax rate out there? No. Do you tell people how much you make every time you buy something? Well, then how could it be a percentage of your income? Right, remember, this is all based on income. So examples of number 2, there are none. There is no flat tax system anywhere in our government system right now. You have not tax on anything.
Is that good or bad?
Yes. I have no idea whether it's good or bad. All I know is that it is, right? There is no such thing as a flat tax. But we like to think there is, right? Right? So we'd like to say that sales tax is a flat tax. I mean, come on, you're paying 5.5%. So regressive taxes. The number one regressive tax that we have, sales tax. Folks, this is regressive tax. The question is, how do you figure that out? How do you determine it? Why? Why is a sales tax regressive? Let's try an example. Let's try it, okay? So, let's compare 2 people. And these are, so this is the person 1 is our poor person. They're making $50,000 a year, right? So it's like family of 6 or whatever, and they're making about 50 grand. That's probably pretty close to the poverty line, technically. Person 2 is a yuppie family. They're both lawyers. They maybe have, 1.2 children. They've got a child and like 8 dogs and 6 cats and 4, Bengal tigers and a parakeet and whatever. They maybe have 1 child, but essentially that child has been shipped off to boarding school anyways. They never see it, right? I shouldn't say that. I'm discriminating against those who are otherwise wealthy. So, well, you shouldn't make fun of the rich either, as much as you shouldn't make fun of the poor. All right. So, the question then is, how do we show that the sales tax on items is regressive for these 2 groups of people? So, what example should we use? Should we use like gas or clothes or something like that? Let's do gas. Gas is a nice, easy example, right? And let's assume that the overall effective gas tax is around 10%. It's more like about 19.8% right now. Well, it's even higher than that now. It's more like 22.2 because they added another 3.4, yeah. Anyways, let's assume it's just 10% so that the numbers are easy. All right, so my question to you is, making $50,000 a year, how much does person one spend on gas? 5,000 bucks? Okay. How much do they pay taxes on that gas? At 10%. What's 10% of 5,000? So their tax on gas is 500 bucks. What percent of their income is that? What's 500 over 50,000? It's 1 over 100, 1%. So this guy who makes 50 grand a year spends 1% of his income on gas tax. Not such a big deal, right? So let's look at it from person two's perspective. How much do they spend on gas? Now, obviously, they're going to, the person who's making 50 grand a year, I mean, they're driving the smallest, most gas-efficient 1990s car they can find, right? Maybe 2,000. Person two is driving a 2012 Lexus SUV. How much gas does it get? How many miles per gallon in a 15 maybe? About 15 miles per gallon. They've really made those better gas, efficiency in the Lexus. It used to be like 8. Now it's up to like 15. It's doubled. I mean, come on. So how much do you think they spend on gas in a year?
50,000.
Think 50,000 even? Well, that's an awful lot. How about let's go with like 25,000. I mean, that's still 5 times as much as the poor person, right? I mean, he maybe has to drive a little bit more because he's got to drive to Florida by himself to vacation every other week. All right, so suppose he spends 25,000 on gas. How much does he pay in tax? $10% of 25,000? $2,500 or $2,500. What's his percent of income spent on gas tax? $2,500 over 500,000. .005 or is it .0005? 0.05. So they pay 0.5% of their income on gas tax. The poor person pays double as a percent of their income. This is why this is a regressive tax. Notice, I mean, how much, look at the numbers though. How much does the rich person spend on taxes on gas? 5 times as much. Isn't that rich person suffering from gas taxes? This is what rich people do. They start talking about hard numbers. They start saying, you paid $500 in tax on gas? Wow, I wish I paid that much. I paid $2,500 in gas tax every year, 5 times as much as you do. You poor people are getting off easy. But this is what the establishment tries to do, is to point out that percentages aren't important, right? Why would you ever use percentages? It's hard facts that are important, and numbers don't lie, right? This guy only pays 500. This guy pays 2,500. That guy's hurting more. Yeah, that poor rich person. Oh yeah, I mean, he can afford to pay the gas tax, right? So think of the states where the richest people live. Texas. Texas is where the top 10 richest people in this country live. Why? No income tax. Because income tax is progressive. Sales tax in Texas, folks, 8.5% to 10.5%. That's where most of the money in taxes is earned in Texas. Why? Because who has to pay the majority of sales tax? Not the rich, the poor. So you can get a job in Texas, but you're going to pay you're going to pay twice as much in tax than you would here, right? I mean, 10% versus 5 to 5.5%, right? Because their governor passed a law that said they didn't want to have income tax anymore. And in order to afford to pay for things, they said, well, we got to get money somewhere, and we certainly can't put it on the rich because they're job creators, and we don't want to hurt those job creators. So let's make it sales tax because that's more benefits received, right? I mean, those people who are paying for most of the stuff, they should be the ones who then get the money coming back, right? And then they start talking about these sorts of things and say, well, if you look at the hard numbers, right? The more you buy, the more you pay. And those rich people will pay more, right? Because they're buying cars that cost twice what the poor people are buying. So yeah, they'll pay twice as much. Of course, they're earning 10 times as much, but let's not talk about that. Percentages are the great creator of regressive taxes, all right? So anytime someone is paying the same amount or something that's based on value, almost always it's going to be regressive, all right? I mean, it's just enough said. All right, so understanding regressive taxes and understanding percentages, it's an important part. These are really the things that I want you to get from this chapter. The different types of taxes and the ways that people get taxes passed, either ability to pay or benefits received. All right? The rest of chapter 16 talks about, majority rule, special interest groups. Basically, how does this stuff happen, right? I mean, why does Texas have a tax scheme that's geared more towards sales taxes instead of income taxes? Why? Well, it's exactly. Or it's the special interest groups who are saying, look, I don't want to have my rich people who donate tons of money to my charity have a really high tax burden, because then they'll have more money available to donate to charities, right? That's exactly right. So here's another way that we can get more regressive taxes, is talk about how the rich people are the people who do all the donating. Of course, that's blatantly false. Most donations come from poor people anyways. But, I mean, don't worry too much about the end of this particular chapter about, rational voter ignorance and bureaucratic inefficiency. Read it if you have trouble sleeping. Well, it'd be good for you. It's not overly exciting. It is relatively interesting in that it talks about how we tend to vote against our own self-interest, which is sometimes weird, but happens. And it's because we don't understand percentages. Basically, if we would become a better country at math, this kind of shit wouldn't happen. But since we don't like math, and every time anybody talks about it, they're like, "Ooh, math, I hate math." Common Core crap. Again, all that kind of stuff I don't care about. It would just be nice if we were positive about mathematics from now on. Exactly. We all love math. That's going to earn you an extra credit point on the final if you write at the very back. I love math. That's an extra 1 point right there. All right, so a little bit of homework from chapter 16. I was going to assign you 3, but I think I'm going to take away one of those. Just do number 4 and 6. It's going to make you do number 8, too. I don't care. 4 and 6 is enough. Page 361. Joe?